I would like to welcome my two guests, Mr. Dr. Ronald and Mr. Mohammed. You are highly welcomed with us tonight. And we are looking forward to this session to come, mixed with music and the culture and explanation behind the music. The deal is that I will introduce Dr. Ronald will introduce Mr. Mohammed, and then hence we will start our session. Dr. Ronald had been always combined his interest for music with interest with literature. In 1998, he obtained the aggregation for German in France, and in 1995, he began teaching at the University of Picardy in Amiens, France, for the Department of German Language and Literature. In 2006, he had been accepting the mission to Abu Dhabi as he played a major role in the launch of the establishment of Paris Sorbonne University in Abu Dhabi. Since 2012, he had been teaching at University of Beirut, Germany, where he obtained his postdoctorate literature qualification. Thank you very much for being here. The bio is very rich, and I leave you the floor to introduce our guest and begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Asma, for inviting me again. I hope I will live up to your expectations. We have an interesting subject today, which is third culture music. It's a bit of a difficult concept, so we will have to speak a bit about philosophy at some point. And philosophy at 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m. can be a bit boring sometimes, which is why I asked my colleague Mohammed to come with me and for this presentation. So yeah, maybe I can say just a few words about what I will say. The whole idea of my talk, in a way, is to show you how important music is for the cultural transfer or the understanding between cultures. And that, in a way, maybe the understanding between cultures is perfectly, will be perfectly achieved through music. So why is that? This is a little bit the question we will be trying to answer today. And there is always the theory and there is the practical truth. And Mohammed, who is here, is from our oud school, from Beit al-Oud. So if you're not playing oud yet, you should come, because Mohammed is not only a performer, he's also teaching oud at the oud school, and he's also composing music. And I think he's going to play some of his compositions today, which are definitely enter in the framework of what we can imagine as third culture music. So maybe to start, let's listen to a bit of music. thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe at the end, maybe you can play one more. Okay.
And understand something about
the third culture music. Okay.
It will be important for me.
I'll try. So I have, maybe I can stand, no? So that's easier, so I see what's behind me. And I took this from basically from the internet. But when we speak about third culture music, what are we speaking about? Or what are we trying to talk about? So you have a home culture, which is, the concept of third culture comes from third culture kids, which is an anthropological concept that came from the US in the 50s and 60s. And you know, I was raised in France, and so usually the French, they like to answer this kind of things. So this is what I'll do today. So you have, the concept of third culture comes from kids, so they have a home culture, and they grow up in another country, which is the host culture. And in the middle, and these kids, or between these two cultures in a way, these kids create a third culture. They're not really kids from their background, and they still have a too strong background to be totally embracing, I would say, the culture of the place where they live. And this is then what this anthropological model calls third culture. Yeah, so the place in the middle, which is called interstitial because it's between the two cultures. This model, and I will be very frank with you from the beginning, has a problem. What is the problem with this model? It's flat. It's flat. Yeah? And I believe when we speak about cultures, we have to speak about dynamics. Yes, and which is actually when we two, you should have stayed here, when we two work together, it's a very dynamic process. Yeah, I come from a Western cultural background, even, yeah, I mean, very much linked to Western thinking or to German thinking, French thinking. And Mohammed comes from a totally different background, from Yemen and from the region here. So how do we get together? Yeah? And the reality of our cultural exchange and the reality of a lot of cultural exchange happening also when you grow up in another country, and I think I can talk about it because I'm in a way the perfect model of a third culture kid, because I'm German and I grew up, I was 6 weeks old when I came to France. So I speak a little bit French like the French. I would have made a great spy if we were still enemies. And I'm really a kid of two cultures. And this is why I have my problems with this model. And what I would like to show you is an attempt to understand and to redefine this model in something a little bit more dynamic and more interesting way than just to say there is A, there is B, and they create C. Yeah. And to do that, I would like to speak a bit about philosophy to you. So, this is why I told you, this is why I brought Mohammed, because now it's going to get a bit more complicated. You have here one of the main German philosophers of the late 19th century, who I think has a lot to say about the subject we were just talking about. And this philosopher is Friedrich Schlegel. If you don't know Schlegel, he is more or less the brain behind the idea of Romanticism. You might not believe it, but Romanticism was created, I mean, the Romantic movement was created by the Germans. Not, yes, that's a discovery. Yeah, you would have thought the French, but no. it's the Germans who created it. And he was actually one of the brains behind this creation. And Schlegel was very influenced by one of the main thinkers of the 18th century, who is of course Immanuel Kant. And in this essay that we are going to talk a little bit about now, an essay from 1797, Schlegel actually takes over or tries to think according to the categories of Kant. And you have to know that in 1797 we're in a time of revolution. Yeah? France has just started its revolution. And the whole thinking of Schlegel is also about how to make a revolution, and more than that, how to make humanity better. And what you have to know is that the thinking of Kant is, of course, totally focused on the power of reason, how reason can develop. And in a way, the thinking of Kant is very linear, because we have the reason in ourselves, so we as human beings will necessarily always and always be more reasonable. And by being more reasonable, at one point we will reach a state of perfection. And this state of perfection, he calls it in an essay that was just published 2 years before the one from Schlegel, he calls it perpetual peace. So after centuries and centuries of war, humanity, because it is reasonable and because it has inbuilt reason, humanity will reach perpetual peace. You live 200 years or more after Kant, and you smile at him. But at the same time, it's a theory, and the theory is strong. The theory says because we are reasonable human beings, at one point we should stop killing each other, we should make peace. It makes sense in a way. Schlegel, who sees what is going around in 1797 and who sees how the revolution is killing its own children, from the beginning is very critical towards Kant. He loves Kant, but he is very critical. And his idea of the whole philosophical thinking is that we can approach maybe a state of perfection, but we will never reach perfection. We will never reach perpetual peace. And he introduces another way of thinking in a way. If I could show it to you, in a way, the thinking of Kant is one line, one straight line. It always gets better. Human beings always get better. For Schlegel, human beings think very differently. For Schlegel, human beings were very great in the antique times of Roman and especially Greek antiquity. Then it got really bad, and now as he is starting to think, he will make humanity better. So the thinking is completely different, because to make humanity better, you have to do something. Humanity will not get better because it has something inbuilt, an a priori, something before every experience built in itself, but the process of making humanity better has to be made by the human being itself. And if the humans do not do this effort, nothing will get better. Is that clear until there? Yeah? So, this gentleman, Georg Forster, who gave the title to this essay, was actually an explorer. And Schlegel writes about this explorer, and he writes about this idea of seeing new worlds. And now let's try to read a bit of German philosophy. Yeah? It's a bit as complicated as how they build machines and things like that, but it's very clearly thought. We will go to the English text. Yeah? You have the German text just below. This necessary reunification, no matter for the whole humanity or for each one of us, of all the fundamental abilities of mankind and the capacities that are in our origin or goal in nature are one and indivisible. Whoa. Not easy, huh? Well, keep on. Although appear to be separated, operating isolated from each other, and in need of development, this reunification cannot and should not, for example, be postponed to such an extent that these individual skills would have been brought to perfection, which would mean forever. This reunification, together with this continuous improvement, should be promoted and venerated at the same time, considered equally sacred with equal rights, even if they are not carried out by the same representatives. Social and cosmopolitan texts are thus equally indispensable resources and conditions of the progressive formation as the actual scientific and artistic ones. So tonight you can say you read German philosophy. Did you understand what he's trying to tell us?
He's trying to tell us that we should cherish every human for whatever he creates and he invents, because this is sacred and it has no ranking in a way among them.
Yes and no.
Okay.
What is sacred? Look very closely at the text. What is sacred? Look what is sacred.
Sacred with equal rights. But before that...
What is sacred? Can I make it, you want it bigger? I don't know, I mean this...
The skills? Skills?
The skills? Not really.
Reunification?
Yes, who said it?
I said it.
Yes. The reunification of the skills is sacred. Not the skills are sacred. If you say the skills are sacred, you would follow Kant. Because then you will say we as human beings have in ourselves the reason inbuilt that allows us to progress. Not the skills are sacred. It means that the different skills that every human being has have to be progressively developed. And that we have to bring together all these human skills so that we can reach this progression. The human itself is not enough. And if you take this thought, you say A. And B is pretty easy to say. If the skills have to be reunited, if the perfection is not in the human being, but is in the exchange with other human being, you can only progress if yes. You can only progress if you exchange with others. That's the only possibility you have to progress and to reach. You will never reach perfection, but you will, through the exchange with others, yeah, social, and he says it even, cosmopolitan texts only then you will be able to approach something that looks like perfection. That's a major difference between in the school of thinking in Europe in the 18th century. Because you have all through the 18th century the domination of the reason. And suddenly someone comes and says, reason is not enough. We have to understand the others before we can actually understand ourselves and before we can progress. Yeah? So it's a major revolution that you're seeing here. And it's not something to be looked over, that the text has the title of Georg Forster, because again, Georg Forster was someone who was exploring the world. He was with Thomas Cook, actually. So the idea that is behind this is you have to discover other civilizations, other cultures, because only then you will be able to put this process into motion. So it's said in a very German way, yes, very logical way, but at the same time, it's very logical, yes. As you can see, the individual skills can only bring you to a certain point. The reunification is the one that is actually sacred and that will bring equal rights. So, this is the first thought that I wanted to give you. And you have to know that for Schlegel, this intercultural exchange. Okay. Sorbonne is coming to the front. So for Schlegel, this intercultural exchange had an absolutely core aspect, because without it, you cannot put this movement of thoughts into motion. And now I would... Good, thank you. I hope you will still like it at the end. And let's not just stay in the 18th century. Let's move forward a little bit. And now let's go to 20th, or let's even say 21st century anthropology. I told you this model was flat. Yeah? So now we're trying to go into a more dynamic model. And this model, one of the great thinkers today, of today's world, is Bruno Latour. And he has developed what he calls symmetric anthropology. So now it's not going to get easier, but it's French. Yeah? So it's not easier. Huh? And his first thought, he has here 3 thoughts that I wanted to share with you. Don't worry, the music is going to come back in. Yeah, it's going to come. It's going to come. Don't worry about it. The first thought is that what Bruno Latour says, and he's very right into saying that, is that our categories of true and false are absolutely problematic categories. And that they need to be redefined. And that the history of science and also has also its cultural and social structures. We live today, in other words, we live today in times where we believe that science can solve all our problems. This is very typical of our Western, I would say, approach today, much more than the Romantic approach. Yeah? Yes. We believe that science can give all the answers. And in a way, our modernity, we link our modernity to our capacity to be scientific human beings. Yeah? Asma is holding her iPhone, yeah? And in a way, she feels modern because she has an iPhone in her hand. No? Exactly, with Abaya and the iPhone. So how modern is the iPhone? This is the question. In 10 years, when she will look at this iPhone, she will think, my God, yeah, what a useless thing this is. Yeah, if you remember your Nokia phones, the little Nokia. I mean, they're still good. You can charge them for a week. Yes, this one. Yeah, is she modern? No, because she's holding this old-fashioned thing. Yeah, so but this is exactly what Latour says. Our science system are ideological. This is an ideology. We think we are modern because we have an iPhone, because we have a fast car, because we have a flat screen TV. This is what makes us think that we're modern. But in fact, we're not modern at all. Yeah? Latour became famous with a book, and the French title is Nous n'avons jamais été modernes. We were never modern. We have never been modern. Yeah. So this is you will at the end, not let me it's gonna come. He's very modern. He's much modern than any iPhone. He's much more modern than any iPhone. Because you see already where we're going. I mean, in a way, I can already sell you the whole idea. And Schlegel already said it. And in a way, Latour will say very similar things. Who are the modern people? It's the people who actually create these exchanges, yeah? Who try to reach to a new humanity through exchanges. And it's those who go beyond this thinking, the strict thinking of scientific, this strict thinking of scientific ideology, which is, of course, the artists. Yeah? They are the ones, if someone is modern, they are the ones who are modern. Yeah, exactly. But it's too easy, huh? I mean, they still have to think a little bit before. So, Latour is always in favor of what he calls a symmetric anthropology. A symmetric anthropology, which is a very disciplined anthropology, what he requests for. And he says the interest for other cultural systems should never come out of a self-referred contrasting perspective. Which means you shouldn't go and see another culture and say, oh my God, these people are so old school, so old-fashioned, so wrong in what they do. And this means also for political systems, for everything. So for Latour, you cannot go with some universal values, even the most positive universal values, which might be the human rights and so on. You cannot go in the name of these values in other countries and say, you do not follow our values, so you are wrong. You have to accept every other system of understanding. Which also means that, for example, if you go to Africa and you speak to, I don't know, maybe someone in Africa who has a non-scientific approach to weather and who tells you because I don't know which ritual he's able to tell you what weather will be next week, you cannot go with a smile and say, oh, but we have our sciences that will predict you exactly the weather next week. Because, and again, this is ideological. This is our thinking of superiority through sciences. The third thought is the Western culture doesn't have a special status as culture of sciences. The reference to other traditions, explanations of nature and artistic productions will only start the process through which a globalized modernity starts to be truly self-referential. Which means we have to understand, first of all, our understanding of science. We have to understand our approach to nature. We have to understand our approach to the world as Westerners before we are able to speak to others and to compare it to other cultures. And by doing so, we will start to be modern. By being self-referential, by thinking about ourselves and being critical towards our own approach, we will start to be modern. And who, again, is the most self-referential human being? The human being that always thinks about his own references? Of course, the artist, who has to know what he is actually doing as an art before he can produce some art. Sorry. And you see here the model. You see here the model that Latour has put into place. And this model, as you can see, is full of arrows between our subject and the nature, because between society and nature. And you could add to this the whole modern dimension is a dimension of networks, a dimension of networks that we have to put in place between us and nature, between us and reality, between us and other human beings, to be able to understand ourselves and ultimately to become truly modern and to overcome all these, I mean, again, this thinking that reason can solve all the problems. Latour here has a very beautiful, and to make it more clear, because so that you understand it better, Latour pleads for a new way of communicating between each other. And he says one of the biggest problem of our times is that we have gone into a double-click communication. We are completely, in a way, our minds are more and more messed up by the way we see the world through internet, through social media. I mean, this is easy to say. But what is he saying? We need to find new ways to communicate among ourselves. So what does that mean? How do we communicate better between ourselves? He uses the idea of the angel. I'll explain it to you. Yeah? In all traditions, angels are called those who transmit not messages, but transformation of souls. What Latour says is, we, as people of the 21st century, we have to be careful not to always go into the same means of communication. What does that mean? How many times did you say, I mean, if you are with someone, if you are in a couple, how many times did you say, I love you? Many times. Daily. Why? Yeah, but if I would tell you every day there is water in this bottle, what would you think about me? If I would tell you every day there is water in this bottle, yeah. Or you would think this guy is crazy. I mean, he's telling us, every day he's telling me the same thing. Yeah? I mean, if I would tell Asma every day there is water in this bottle,
Argumental.
you would say, I know that.
Argumental.
Yes. But if you say to someone you love, I love you, did you ever get the answer, I know that?
I would be the one disappointed.
Okay, but me too, yeah, but if someone tells you I love you, do you answer, yeah, okay, good.
I love you more. I love you.
No, but what the whole thinking about this is, of course, we are used to a communication that is linked to simple facts, which he calls double click. We ask a question, we want an answer to exactly what we are asking for. We send an email with a completely clear message. Yeah? Please send me the papers, answer to the mail, yes, I will send you the papers. Please sign my paper, yes, I will sign your paper. I love you is something else. You are evocating something. You're saying this not to deliver a message, because in a way this message has been delivered maybe 1 month ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, but you're saying it because you want to create something with your words. True? When you say I love you, you want the other one to feel something about it, and you want to receive an answer in a way to it. It's what he calls, Latour says, there is a way of talking which is the double-click talking, which is I want my paper to be signed, and the other one is the prayer talking, which is that you want to transform something. You want, it's like a prayer. Your prayers might not get answered, but you still keep on praying. And you might say, I love you 1,000 times, but in a way you want to transform the reality through your words. Do you see where we're going? Do you see? Because which language now do you know? Which language do you know among yourself that could still carry this transformation process? Especially now that we're not so much into poetry anymore. I mean, still we are. Poetry is something that does that. But the one language that in all these years since Schlegel wrote has been carrying most of this exchange process is? Yes, of course. Music. And music has this ability, this unique ability to transform the souls, to deliver a message that can change the recipient and the producer. Yeah? When Muhammad plays, he is transformed, and the people around him are transformed as well. And at the same time, this language does, and to go back to this very clear German thinking from Schlegel, this language does what he said should be provided by our striving for perfection, which is this cultural exchange. Music can create this cultural exchange, transform people, and in a way is a very beautiful method to reach and to develop our abilities. So I'm not saying that because we listen to Muhammad playing we will reach a new golden age, although maybe. But it's important to know that philosophically this exchange program between cultures, between systems of thinking, has been at the very early beginning of the revolution and the revolution of thoughts in the late 18th century, early 19th century. And yes, I mean, when we talk about third culture music, let's forget this term of third culture music, but the very exchange program, two words. So the very exchange program of the thoughts is something that can be done and perfectly done through music. So yes, maybe so we can listen to 2-3 more minutes of music and consider that this time we listen to it to progress to perfection and to progress to a better world. Yeah? So please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is just, I don't feel right to let such a rich subject going without Q&As and interaction. Although our time had come to an end, we have our guests here already and they would like to leave exactly by 7. But if you will join us to attend this session, maybe after we can catch by 10 to 15 minutes with Q&As with the audience. I don't feel like we can just let you go. Really? Okay, so I think although it's complicated German and French philosophy and not easy to catch, but with Roland, he had been able to take us through culture and reaching to music as the all interaction. Is anyone had a question would like to ask or to add or?
The angels. In a way, Latour uses the angel like a very famous German poet in the 20th century, like Rilke. Yeah, the angel is a messenger. Yeah, but the purpose of the angel in any tradition, and I think it's in the religions as well. But you have to see it in a poetic way. The purpose of the angel is not to transmit a message. It's not to be just a messenger. He's not there to just say, this is the message delivered. It's not a letter that you put at the post office. Yeah? It's not an email. The purpose of the angel is to transform the reality. Yeah? And which is, again, this is if you read Rilke's poetry, you have one of the main German poets of the 20th century who takes this as the core of its poetry. Yeah, it's the idea of the poet, actually, the one who transforms his words transform, and in a way you can apply this wonderfully to music as well. Yeah, he doesn't look like an angel, but he is. So it has this angel-like character. Yeah.
Okay, now thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for this enriching and enlightening lecture, and we will have pictures. You sign our book, and please join us for the next session.
For sure, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.